When you're learning a foreign language, vocabulary is by far the most important thing. Simply because if you don't know the words, you will not be able to understand anything. And of course, you won't be able to speak. So you need to learn a lot of words. And among those words, the most important ones are verbs. Because if you know the verb, you know the meaning of the sentence, or at least you know what's going on, what's the action that's taking place, right? So verbs are probably the most important words. You need to learn a lot of verbs, and the most efficient way to learn verbs is through example sentences. Verbs are words that often have a lot of different forms, not in English. You know, I want to drink, you want to drink, to sleep, she wants to leave, we want to stay. Doesn't change at all, almost. I can you, he can, they can. Yeah. But for languages like Russian or Spanish or, well, many languages, you get a lot of conjugations. So the most efficient way to learn those verbs and at least learn the basic conjugations. Later, I'll explain how to learn all of the conjugations, but to learn the basic conjugations in the beginning, when you are just learning a lot of vocab and you're learning all those verbs that you need as part of the vocab, that's probably the most important part of the vocab, is this. You use a list of the most common verbs. I organized it like that, so you get the most common ones here, A1, and then A2, slightly less common, and the list gets more and more difficult, also longer, because there's 50 of them here, 50 of them, then 100, 100, 100, and then God knows how many here. But the point is, you start with the most common verbs, like can, want, go, to be, do, all that stuff. All of those that uh, tell, go, watch, take. These are verbs that you'll see all the time, so you need to know them really well. And once you know these really well, then you move on to the next list and then to the next one. But by having it like this, yeah, I can help. Я могу помочь. Ты можешь прийти, он может бегать быстро. Yeah? Я могу, ты можешь, может, они могут. And like I can, you can, he can, they can. You see it in different contexts. So you see the same verb in different forms. And that is good to learn the grammar as well in context without studying or anything. You just learn all the different forms by sheer pattern recognition because you see a yeah, mago and then hachu. Okay, the u ending is like I. Ja делаю here as well. Ty możesz, ty хочешь, ty делаешь. So your brain instantly, not instantly, but like after a few hundred repetitions, it quickly picks up all those patterns and you learn the grammar, the basic grammar, fast by doing that. But also you learn the same word if you see it several times in slightly different contexts, you're much more likely to remember it rather than if you try to learn it from a list, use flashcards and uh, you get the infinitive form and then you try to like this is the translation and that's it. No, if the verb is conjugated in different forms and in different example sentences, you're much more likely to remember it. And also you can make it much easier by using uh, mnemonic associations in the beginning. So what I recommend you do is using a mnemonic association per verb. So not for each one of these, just for some of them, the ones that are difficult to remember, or maybe for all of them if you're a beginner in the language. But do it once. So like this is mog, moj, okay. What sounds like that? Can, you can visualize a can, you can visualize Obama saying yes we can, whatever. Mo, you can visualize Mo from The Simpsons, for example. You make some like something dumb, stupid story like that, something silly, and you visualize it, and it'll stick. And you do it once with all of them. It's 50 of them. You can do it in a day. And then you simply read while listening to the audio file several times. And then you keep listening to the audio file the following days. And the next day, you go to the A2 list and you do the same thing, memorize with associations, and then you read while listening a few times, you repeat them aloud a few times. And of course, you keep listening to this one. And then the third day, you do it with the B2 list and you keep listening to this too. And you keep doing that so that in a few days, or in a couple of weeks, maybe, if you're slow, then you will have learned a lot of verbs and you will be able to understand way more. Now, these are only some of the conjugations, and especially for languages like French or Portuguese or Spanish, where you get lots of different cases, you get a lot of different conjugations because it's not only um, like the person that changes, like I can, you can, like Yamaguchi, Moses, or Moses. No, they also have like the past and different, lots of different past versions and different conditionals, and the verb has, there are infinite versions, not infinite, but dozens of conjugations of the same verb. And I've actually done that before, and it wasn't an efficient way to do it because instead of four uh, sentences here, we'd have 40, and that's just to learn one verb. So, and the list is available, but it's, and if you use it right, and if you have the work ethic to go through it, you will. But it's 20,000 sentences, So it's not an efficient way to do it. I think if you're super hardworking, it will work, but um, because of the fact that the high frequency verbs, the A1 verbs, are much more important because they show up much more often. And also, there are high frequency conjugations as well. So you should focus on learning those. Just learn the basics instead of I would have done if this and that. That's for later on, right? But to learn all of those, what I've done is I've prepared another list with just the 10 most basic verbs, like to be like these ones, but just this instead of several hundred verbs or thousands of verbs. So instead of four example sentences with different conjugations of the same verb, in order to learn all conjugations and all tenses and everything in a language, instead of four sentences of hundreds of verbs with four example sentences each, you'll get 10 or 20 verbs with dozens of conjugations each. But you should only use that once you've learned the verbs really well with the basic stuff here. And then you go to the endless conjugation, not endless, but it looks scary in the beginning. But if you see the same 10 or 12 or 20 verbs that you already know, each one with lots of conjugations, and then you just go through that list a few times and you listen to all of those, you can learn those relatively easily once you know the verbs. Again, grammar is not something that should worry you at all. Just learn a lot of sentences, and especially if you're also learning language islands, all the grammar that you need, you learn it in context easily, right? So focus on vocab. And the best way to learn vocab, like I said in the beginning, mnemonic associations for each one of them. So to do, to make, dielat, dielash, diel on dielat, muy dielam. Deal, who makes deals? Trump makes deals. So visualize Trump making a deal, for example. Things like that. Just create associations, and your brain will remember the words really easily. And then simply lots of reviewing, reading, listening, and repeating aloud with four example sentences of each verb, and that's it. Right? It's really that simple.